here we go. Today's date is 2/12/16. It is titled Energy in the Ecosystem. Energy flow, if you want to be more specific, that was the title of it. So what we're going to be looking at is how the energy moves within the ecosystem so each organism gets a source of food. And so there are 4 different categories. The first category is called producers. Second category is called consumers. Third category is called the decomposers. And the fourth category is called the scavengers. Okay, so we'll take a closer look at each one of those. But those are the 4 ways that food and organisms are going to move in terms of energy throughout the ecosystem. All right, so the first one we'll put in green is going to be producers. And our definition of producers are going to be organisms that make their own food by sunlight. Okay, another name for these guys are going to be autotrophs. Okay, so A-U-T-R-O. Sorry, I totally butchered that up in spelling. It's A-U-T-U. Let me erase it for you. It is A-U-T-O-T-R-O-P-H. Okay, that's an autotroph, which means self-feeding. So I have a question. If I wanted to make my own food by sunlight, because I like the sunlight, could I just simply go outside for the next 3 hours, just sit with my arms out and just sit in the sun and make food?
Yeah.
Carter?
No, because you have to use photosynthesis.
Oh, I would have to use photosynthesis. Cool. So I'll just use photosynthesis then. Is that? But I can't. Why not? Why not?
Because you can't make your own.
Okay. Yeah.
Only plants can do photosynthesis.
How do you know what you say you know? Like, how do you know that plants can only do it? Why? How do you know that I can't do it? I mean, I'm a science teacher. I have a special power.
Because plants have chlorophyll.
They have chlorophyll. All right, okay, so now you're talking to me in a language that I'm starting to understand. So, what is chlorophyll? Yes?
The stuff in a plant that makes it have photosynthesis.
Ooh, that's a tongue twister. It is in there that makes the photosynthesis, but what else? What else? Yeah.
It's the stuff that makes it green.
But is a plant green?
No. Oh, it's the stuff that makes it the color it is. It's a pigment.
It is a pigment. But now remember, and when you get into 7th grade, we'll talk about this. Is something that is actually that color the actual color that it is?
No.
Kelly? If I have a lemon, and we know that that color looks like it's yellow. Is that the color, Kelly?
No, it's not, because what we're seeing is the light crossing us, and so technically the lemon is actually every single color but yellow.
Because it's absorbing all the other colors with the exception of the one that is not present, and so it reflects back where we see that color. Okay, so, but yeah, we see it as green. That's the way that we interpret it. But it is absorbing all the colors, and so that is true. So let's look at it. If this was a plant, all right, so here is our plant leaf, and we were to take one of the cells that were there and to look at it underneath the microscope, it would look something like that. It might not be a perfect square, but it is definitely going to have more of a square shape than circle. Does anybody know the reason why that it has a square shape versus a circle, in which animals have circles for their cell shapes? Amber?
Well, I just got a question.
Yes.
So, like, for animals, that works for them too, like their colors wise?
It works that way for all things because that's the way that our like the absorbing process works, and then it reflects back out the color that is not present.
So my horse could be purple, that's all I know.
Well, Roy G. Biv, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, that's a color spectrum. All colors fit into there. So it's absorbing colors, and then in return, it's reflecting back the ones that are not present. Yes?
What about clear? I don't get it.
That's transparent.
No, but like, there are no colors.
Yeah, it's transparent, meaning like
No,
if you
but
look
like
at...
the clear stuff with like the rainbow stuff on top, also rainbowy. There are no colors.
We'll have to talk about that one later. I'll have to, because I want to get through the notes, but I'll be happy to answer that. But yeah.
So like, does that mean that my shirt isn't red?
Okay. Well, then when you get into black and white and gray, we're starting to talk about shades of color. So that's a little bit different because we have shades and then we have our visible color spectrum.
So this isn't purple.
It's all the other colors that are absorbing in it,
So it's not.
except for violet. All right. Does anybody know the reason why that it takes this square shape versus circular? Yes. Huh? Oh, okay. Yeah,
I have a question. Do we have to draw that?
I would.
Sweet.
Yes.
Because it's
supposed to be-
better.
Okay, because of what?
Because the chlorophyll flows better.
Okay, good try. I mean, it may, because it has a different surface area, it might have something to do with that. But the main reason why is that this one contains something that is called a cell wall. A cell wall. And that's different between animal cells and plant cells. We do not have cell walls. The cell wall is kind of an added kind of armor that protects the plant from anything that could potentially hurt it. And so it's like an extra layer to it. We animals do not have that. We do not have a cell wall. And when you bite into any type of plant, like if you're eating any type of like lettuce or spinach, and you notice that there's that crunch to it, what you're doing is you're biting and cracking through the cell wall and the cellulose that exists in it. If we go further inside, what we're actually going to discover is that there are organelles, which are kind of the functioning parts inside there. And there's this little thing that's called, it looks like a green jelly bean, that is actually going to be what is known as the chloroplast. And the chloroplast holds the chlorophyll. Okay, so this is the stuff that makes plants happy. Okay, it is a chemical. And what is going to happen is it is going to become very excited when things hit it. All right? What could be that one thing that would hit it that would make it so excited? Ashley, what do you think? What would be that one thing that would hit it that would get it super excited? Rain is important, definitely, in the soil. George, Boet. Yeah, that's the one that I was thinking of. So we introduce Mr. or Mrs. Sunlight.
Can I draw?
And so, there you go.
Yeah.
Boy, the sun is my favorite planet.
Yeah.
It's not a planet.
It's a star.
Oh, that's right. It is a star. And so, here it comes. It strikes that area. And what happens is that if you combine sunlight along with CO2, which is carbon dioxide, and you also add in a little bit of H2O, which is water, and you have all three of these together, what happens is it kind of frees up this chemical to do what it is excited to do, which is to convert and make what the plant uses as its source of energy, which is what? Anybody know what it makes? What is it? Yeah.
Photosynthesis?
Well, that's what this process is called, but what does it make? Yeah.
Food?
What is the food for a plant? Sugar. Okay? And so we introduced the fact that the plant makes sugar in which that it's able to use as its source of energy. Okay? So the plant has sugar, and that's what is its source of food. In return, the plant gives off something that we enjoy, which is going to be oxygen. Okay, so oxygen is going to be the product that we enjoy out of this. And so this whole process is what allows for a plant to be able to survive and produce its own food. So if we do not contain the chlorophyll and the chloroplast, we are not going to be able to photosynthesize, which means that we are not going to be able to make our own food. So the reason why Mr. Banish isn't able to sit outside for 3 hours and make food is because my cells do not contain chloroplast, which has the chlorophyll, which is able to do this. Yes?
When you bite into celery, why is it like those little like line things?
The line things.
Like the little strings.
Oh, well, that's just you're ripping off. I mean, when you're biting into that, you're biting through the cellulose, and so those are just parts of it that are part of, like, if you look at it closer, it's called like vascular tissue, and so there's different parts to the vascular tissue. All right, continuing on, we have consumers. Consumers are going to be organisms that eat other organisms for food. Okay? These are also known as heterotrophs. Okay, so these are heterotrophs. They cannot make their own food. They need to get their own food. And there are three different types of consumers. The first one is going to be a herbivore, which eats plants. There is going to be a carnivore, which is going to eat meat. And the last one, and I'll let you copy this down, is going to be an omnivore, which is going to eat both plants and meat. Okay? So those are the three that fit into the consumers. An example of each one, for a herbivore, a deer would be one that eats only plants. A carnivore, an example would be a lion. An omnivore, an example would be me, Mr. Banish, because I eat both plants and meat, or animals. Okay? So our examples for these are going to be deer, a lion, and Mr. B. Okay. So those are the different consumers that exist. Yes?
What do worms eat?
Soil. Like leaves that have basically decomposed, like they will help to break that down. That's why they're actually really, really useful in fertilizing the soil, because as they move around, they kind of stir and mix it up. Yeah.
Would ants be a carnivore?
Yeah, I would think so. I think so. That would be yes. Yes, that's a very good point. So, yep, exactly right. Exactly right. Well, most eat vegetables and plants, like fruits and vegetables. So, all right. Next, when we were talking about our different levels, we started to look at what a scavenger was. And a scavenger is an organism that feeds on dead organisms. Okay, so an example of this could be a vulture. And then the decomposer is going to be an organism that breaks down the dead organism. Okay, an example of this is bacteria or fungi or fungi, depending on how you want to pronounce it. So it's time for a banish drawing. And so here is a deer.
That looks like my deer.
I will label it so when you're looking at these notes that you actually know that it is a deer. And it has passed away. It's no longer with us. Sometimes you might see this on the side of the road. And so what's going to happen is as this deer has passed away, the first thing that's going to happen is that our friends, the scavengers, are going to come and they are going to they're going to begin to pick away and tear away the meat. And that is going to be their source of energy. Shortly after that, our decomposers are going to start to come in also, and they are going to begin to break down this organism. And so at the end, honestly, all that's going to be left, most likely, is going to be kind of the fur and then also the bones. Okay? Because both of these organisms are working independently, yet they both are in the same process of taking this organism that was once living and using it as a source of energy. And so what happens is that the deer slowly becomes decomposed. And it's the decomposers and the scavengers that will go about doing this. The scavengers are the first ones on the scene. After that, the decomposers will start to grow and start to break it down. Amber?
Aren't like maggots still?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, they're so gross. I've seen it in videos.
Yes.
How do worms reproduce?
How do they reproduce?
Oh my god.
Well, we'll talk about that at some point. All right. So, what I want you to do is, a lot of you were asking me when you were doing the lab with the food chains and the food webs, a lot of times you were asking me things like, well, Mr. B, how can we have, like, even in that example of the question of the day, we had the egg, and then up here it had the larva, then it had the pupa, and then it had the mosquito. Okay?
Domain, Maestro, please report to the office. Domain, please report to the office.
And what you were doing is you were asking me, like, can we kind of make our food chain like that? And what I was saying to some of you was, you usually don't do it in kind of a circular fashion. We usually leave the circles to life cycles in science. Okay, this is a life cycle of a mosquito. It first comes out as an egg, then it hatches and becomes a larva, then it goes to a pupa stage, then it goes to a mosquito, the adult stage, then it reproduces, has more eggs, and then it goes through this over and over again. Okay? But when you're talking about a food chain, what we're trying to do is we're trying to show the way that energy flows. And oftentimes I find that a triangle is the best way for us to demonstrate how energy is going to flow. Alright, so if we say that towards the bottom, we are going to make this the producers, we know that they are going to be on the bottom because the only thing that a producer is going to eat is going to be what? Yep, sunlight. Okay, and so that one, pretty easy to see that it's going to be towards the bottom because it's not going to be eating anything. And the sunlight obviously is abundant. It's there every single day, even when it's cloudy. The sun is still out. All right, it's just hid behind some clouds. Then we have consumers. And the one thing I want you to be aware of with the consumers is the fact that there are different levels of consumers. We call these the first level consumers. And oftentimes these tend to be herbivores. Okay, so they tend to be the herbivores. Then we have kind of our second level consumer, which we're going to say are typically omnivores. Now they can be flip-flopped here. And then we have our third level ones, which is also a consumer, which is going to be a carnivore. And so this bottom one here is going to be our decomposers. And then you could probably even put in there scavengers. Okay? So what happens a lot of time is the fact that you have these organisms that are flowing from the bottom towards the top. Okay? And when we were doing the lab, I believe it was the third question on there, asked you something like, what did the arrow show you? Or what did the arrow tell you? Or something along those lines. And a lot of you just said, or what direction did it point to? Or there was something that was tied in there. And a lot of you just said up. And that was it. Or some of you said it was pointing at the organism that it eats. And while that's true, what the arrow, and this is the value of this question, the arrow was showing you that the transfer of energy to the organism that it is eating. And the place where it gets that upward transfer, so if you want to use the word upward transfer, is because of the fact that if you think of the triangle, okay, now some people might draw theirs differently. This is just kind of how I think of it. Because I know that the first level consumers, if they're going to be herbivores, are going to give energy, the producers are going to give energy to those herbivores because they are going to eat the plants. So see how the arrow is going upward, and it is showing that the producers are giving energy to the first level consumers. And then if our omnivores are eating those first level consumers, or they are eating those producers, again, it's going to put the arrow in an upward direction. And that's why these two can be kind of interchangeable between the omnivores and carnivores. And then oftentimes the carnivores are either eating the first or the second level consumers, omnivores, or they're eating the herbivores as well. Okay, and so what this does is it shows you that energy is flowing from the producer level all the way up. And then obviously these decomposers and scavengers are going to eat any of the following, so that's why typically they're put towards the bottom after it has passed away. And so that's what this kind of shows you. All right, and what I wanted you to see when you were doing the lab is, one, what the arrow represented. It shows the transfer of energy. The second thing I wanted you to do is I wanted you to start to see how it forms. All of the first level consumers are all grouped together because of the fact that they eat plants. And if you go up a little bit, you find all of the organisms that eat those first level consumers. So those become the second level, and so on. So what it does is it doesn't make a perfect triangle, but it at least shows you that there are different levels that exist within this. Okay? Yes?
So will a carnivore only eat meat, or will they eat something?
Nope, because then if it eats any type of plants, then it moves and shifts back to what would be considered to be an omnivore. So, all right. Then we got to give definitions to our food chain. A food chain is an event in which an organism eats another organism. Now, I'm going to put my little twist on this, and I'm going to tell you that I think that the food chain is kind of a simplistic way of thinking of how food gets cycled through. I'm also going to say that it's not necessarily not real life. Okay, now let me explain what that means. For myself, okay, this morning for breakfast, I had a smoothie. Okay, so I put strawberries, I put some blueberries, I put some cherries in there, some almond milk, and a little bit of Greek yogurt. I put it into my container. I put it into the Ninja, pushed the power button, mixed it all up. Oh, was it phenomenal. Oh, it was good stuff. And then yesterday morning, I had an omelet. Okay, I took the egg whites. I put some different types of, I have different peppers, so some red peppers, yellow peppers. I put some cheese in there, and I put a little bit of ham in there. Okay? Now, yesterday and today, okay, that is a different breakfast that I had. And what a food chain does is it gives you a very general, simple way of looking at what the animal eats. That's not real life. It's not what it does every single day. All right? So I don't want you to always think that when you're looking at a food chain that it's necessarily every single thing that it eats. It's a very condensed, very simple version. If we were to look at the real organism, you'd want to look at everything that it eats. Okay, I had the smoothie today. I had, if I had the omelet the other day, and let's say that tomorrow morning I'm going to have yogurt, fruit, and maybe some granola. Okay, so I have to take another day. I keep looking at it day by day. That is more of a better way of describing it. All right, so if we take a food web where you have a bunch of food chains grouped together. Now what you have is you have a bunch of information that makes it more complex, and it's more real life because you can see what the organism eats, not just one day what it eats. So you want to make sure that given the choice between a food chain and a food web, the better choice to do is a food web because it shows more of what the organism truly is. Right? Then there's one last note and we're done. Okay. And the last note is going to be the energy pyramid. And an energy pyramid is going to be the amount of energy that
Luke
is
Johnson, Trevor McGray to the office.
transferred
Luke Johnson, Trevor
to
McGray to
each
the office.
level. Okay, so if we have our energy pyramid, Okay, there is going to be more energy towards the bottom. Okay, so there's going to be more energy towards the bottom, and there's going to be less energy towards the top, which means that there's going to be less organisms that are going to exist towards the top. Okay, there's going to be more organisms that are found towards the bottom, because if there's more food, there's going to be more organisms, more diversity. Okay, and that completes the notes. I'll stop this.